Hi so much. My name is Hayley. I've come across to Southampton this week from Cardiff, where I work in a church there as part of their ministry trainee programme. I'm actually from Southampton, so it's a privilege to be with you all this week. I'm exploring this idea of finding freedom and thinking together about where we might find it. The places that we might look to that could give us what we're searching for. And this evening, as Emily said, we're thinking about our climate crisis. I don't know if you know much about it, but the UN says a lot about it on their website. This is the kind of headline of what they have to say. Climate change is the defining crisis of our time, and it is happening even more quickly than we feared. That's their summary of our current moment. They go on to say, no corner of the globe is immune from the devastating consequences of climate change. Rising temperatures are fueling environmental degradation, natural disasters, weather extremes, food and water insecurity, economic disruption, conflict and terrorism. Sea levels are rising, the Arctic is melting, coral reefs are dying, oceans are acidifying, and forests are burning. It is clear that business as usual is not good enough. As the infinite cost of climate change reaches irreversible highs, now is the time for bold collective action. It's a pretty stark picture, isn't it? And we're seeing the effects of it play out all across our world. Last year saw the worst drought in Europe in over 500 years, affecting food and energy production, water availability, and wildlife. It also fueled wildfires, crop losses, and caused more than 20,000 deaths. We heard about devastating floods in Pakistan, considered to have been made up to 50% worse because of climate change, increasing rainfall. As a result, nearly 1,500 people died, with 33 million more people being affected and 1.7 million homes being destroyed. Earlier this year, we learned that 2022 was the warmest year on record in the UK, with temperatures worryingly reaching an average above 10 degrees. Dr. Mark McCarthy, head of the Met Office National Climate Information Centre, said the UK surpassing an annual average temperature of 10 degrees is a notable moment in our climatological history. It is clear from the observational record that human-induced global warming is already impacting the UK's climate. Even just this week, New Zealand has been put in a national state of emergency as they are hit hard by Cyclone Gabriel. Regions of the country have been cut off from road access, electricity and mobile networks are down, and neighbourhoods have been flooded, with some being destroyed by landslides. In response, the country's climate change minister, James Shaw, spoke passionately. There will be people who say it's too soon to talk about these things, but we are standing in it right now. This is a climate change-related event. The severity of it, of course, made worse by the fact that our global temperatures have already increased by 1.1 degrees. Weather is changing, land is being affected, and human life is being lost. Homes are being destroyed, and the planet we live in is becoming uninhabitable. The beautiful world that we call our home is dying. And it's left a number of young people with eco-anxiety, a chronic fear of environmental doom. We are so constantly surrounded by news of our dying, decaying planet that many are struggling to cope, fearing for their future and that of their families. Child psychiatrists in England are finding that one of the young people they're treating, over 50% of them are distressed about this crisis. But you don't need me to stand here this evening and paint that vivid picture of the problem, because we all live in it. You don't need me to convince you there's a problem. Instead, what we need to find is a solution. What we're desperately fighting for is hope. We need some kind of glimmer of light that we can stop this encroaching darkness and bring our restless world to a sense of peace. We need hope that we can slow down the decay, hope that we can delay some of the predictions from coming to pass, Hope that we might even stop this getting any worse. It feels wishful and far-fetched at times, doesn't it? But without it, what are we to do? Living with anxiety about our future is debilitating. Instead, we need hopeful outcomes. So what can we do? What hope is there for us in turning this around? Well, as many campaigns will tell us, it starts with me and it starts with you. And there are a million small changes we can make to play our part in protecting the planet. We can reuse water bottles, reduce disposable plastic, shop second-hand. We can swap our cars for bikes, buy longer-lasting light bulbs, and plant trees. We can volunteer and raise awareness. There is no end to the opportunities for us to be part of the change. We can also look to those in power to help us in this fight. As international leaders on the environment and nature, the UK government have made a number of commitments to see us play our part in fighting climate change. In December, Environment Secretary Therese Coffey spoke at the UN Convention in Montreal, saying, "We are committed to leaving our natural world in a better state for future generations, and today we are laying the foundations that will help deliver on this commitment." The government published some of their legally binding targets, among which include commitments to deliver on their net zero ambitions by increasing tree and woodland cover, halving the waste per person that is sent to residual treatment by 2042, and halting the decline in species populations by 2030. But there have also been some more extreme suggestions. There are some who are very aware that while we might make some difference, changing habits isn't enough anymore. We need bigger solutions. For example, back in 2013, David Attenborough suggested that a growing population is not helping the crisis and thought it would help if we could convince people to stop having such large families. He is suggesting that if we shrink the population, we might be able to reverse some of the issues. And even more boldly, before his death in 2017, scientist Stephen Hawking said that humans needed to colonize another planet within 100 years or face the threat of extinction. For Hawking, with threats like climate change looming large, the only option was to leave the Earth and make a home elsewhere. Our solutions highlight two major issues in our fight against climate change. The first is that the fear and doom seem unavoidable. Hawking and Attenborough both have an incredibly pessimistic outlook. Both are essentially saying it's too late. We've already done irreversible damage, and our small efforts are no longer worthwhile. We need more extreme solutions to stop this crisis, and even then they might not make any difference. And in this we see our conundrum, because it seems that we are both our own greatest hope and our own greatest problem. We can work to make small changes that might help, but human beings are also the major cause of the problem. We've treated the planet like a disposable resource for our own gain. We are the ones who have done irreversible damage that it might be too late to stop. Our very existence and the enjoyment of our lives is at the expense of our planet, and we are now paying the price. But we are those who are supposed to fix it. Our world is in crisis, and with some suggesting we have less than 12 years before we do irreversible damage, with no real solutions in sight, what hope do we have when the very ones looking to fix it are the very ones perpetuating the problem? I'd love you to discuss some of this on your tables for a few minutes. We have our first two questions of the evening. There'll be a few sections for you to discuss as we go along. The first question is, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in September, "The climate emergency is a race we are losing, but it is a race we can win." I'd love you to discuss whether you agree with that statement. And the second question is, why do we feel this kind of burden of responsibility? Where does that urge to care for the planet come from? Why have we all feeling that responsibility to care? we're thinking about what hope we have as we face this crisis of our time. And you might be surprised to find that those protesting and working towards a more sustainable way of living share something in common with Christian beliefs about the world. Both share a belief that humans have a responsibility to care for it. It's our home. It's a place full of beauty and wonder. Our planet gives us life by providing water and food, shelter and air to breathe. It inspires us with awe at its beauty and wows us with its ability to grow and create. It is worth protecting, and we have a duty as humans to do that. But why is that desire there? What foundational truth exists that makes sense of our burden for responsibility? Without one, none of this makes any sense. Our desires for a better world are completely unfounded. It's nice that we want to do something, but why waste our breath if it doesn't mean anything anyway? Christianity is the only place that makes sense of that deep-seated desire to love and care for our world. It's rooted in the reality that it was created intentionally by God and is guarded and guided by a creator who cares for all that he has made. In a formless and empty darkness, God saw the potential for beauty and wonder. And out of that void, he brought life. He spoke and light shone. He carved snow-capped mountains. He dug out the depths of the oceans. He smoothed the sand of the desert. He even made the stars. And into these environments, so intentionally crafted, he brought life. He filled the oceans with the magic of sea life. He covered the earth with every kind of animal, from the lion king to the tiny servant ant. And after each piece of the masterpiece was finished, he continued the same refrain: "It is good." But he didn't stop there. He crowned the earth with his very best work, human beings. Crafted to be like him, he gave them the most sacred job of any living thing he had made: rule over and make more from this good land I've given you. That was our job from the very beginning. Bring life from the ground, craft it into beautiful things, feed the animals, let the land continue to thrive by protecting and preserving. Our instinct to cry out against the injustice of climate change and our desire to do what we can in our power to preserve our earth is rooted here in our very nature. But we know something is wrong, because as we've heard already, that's not the reality that we live in. We don't have a perfect relationship with creation. We haven't stewarded it properly. We are not ruling with justice and care. So what happened? James Gustav Speth, US advisor on climate change, recognizes it's bigger than we have imagined. I used to think that top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that 30 years of good science could address these problems. I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with these, we need a cultural and spiritual transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. James Gustav Speth sees the issue. It's bigger than better science. It's bigger than better leadership. It's bigger than us trying to care more and be more responsible. There's something wrong with our hearts, and the planet is paying for it. And that problem, as he has spelled out, is selfishness and greed. And it appeared moments after the world was created. Instead of enjoying the good gift of creation, caring for the earth, respecting its boundaries, we took what we wanted from it. We were warned that there were some parts of creation that were best left alone unless we wanted to cause serious damage. But we thought we knew better than the one who had made it all. So instead of trusting his guidance and playing our part to bring more life, we took more than we were given. And in turning to our own way, we damaged the earth in such a way that it could not be cultivated with the ease and beauty with which it had been made. Instead, the ground became hard to work. Instead of producing fruit, it produced thorns. Instead of peace between creatures, there was a desire to eat, kill, and destroy. Instead of producing more life, the earth was trapped in a cycle that would always lead to death. The whole of creation and every part of it is weighed down by chains that it cannot throw off, because human beings have chosen their own way to cultivate the earth, and it involves destruction. That's what we're seeing the effects of. That's what we're working to fix, and what climate protesters are seeking to change. But for all of the good it's doing to raise awareness and grow our love for the planet, climate campaigning lacks one major thing: any real hope, either for the planet or for the ones who have caused the mess. All these campaigns, forums, and conferences do is remind us of our unsolvable problem. The message is the same everywhere, all the time. For all the wins, we still need to run faster. We still need to do more and do it quickly. Things are worse than we feared. Ahead of COP26, David Attenborough put it starkly: we must act now or it will be too late. Greta Thunberg, the young Swedish activist, said it quite plainly at the World Economic Forum back in 2019. Adults keep saying that we owe it to the young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day, and then I want you to act. Greta, like many climate campaigners, wants leaders to be shackled by the fear and moved by it. She doesn't want optimism from them, or hope, or empty promises. She wants them to look around and feel that sense of doom that many of us feel, and let that change them. But if all we have is fear, what moves us to act? If there's no real hope and all we have is crippling fear, trapped by an inability to make any difference, what really is the point? Hope of change and optimism for the future are the only reasons for us to try. If we don't have them, we may as well leave the planet to finish its cycle of decay. If there's no good news, as hard as we try, we won't be able to stop the bad news. We need hope, and we need a bigger hope than we can conjure. Like James Gustav Speth says, we don't just need bigger, better science. We need a spiritual and cultural transformation. We need a hope that things can be different. And that's exactly what the creator of this earth offers. God didn't just set the world spinning on its axis and move on to other projects. He has watched over and been involved in the evolution and growth, joys and sorrows of this world since he poured the first drop into the ocean and pushed the first seed into the ground. So what greater hope is there for our world than the one who set the whole thing in motion in the beginning, coming to set it right? The creator of all people knows how to fix what is broken. The hands that carved the mountains know how to rebuild its foundations. The greatest hope for the environmental crisis was born when the creator came to his creation to heal its pain. In echoes back to the account of the world's creation that we've talked about, the book of John opens by telling us that the Word that was with God in the beginning, making all things, has now entered into that which he made. If you have one of these on your tables, just take a glance down at the very first page, or the second page. Do you see how John is constantly drawing us to the light that has come bursting through the darkness of a world under a curse? He has come to start the work of recreation, to restore all that has been damaged since the creation began. As we start reading John's account, our eyes are drawn to the light. We're looking for the one who has come to recreate, not only to stop the crisis of our dying planet, but to reverse it. This is the transformation that James Gustav Speth longs for. It's the transformation that climate campaigners are fighting for. It's the transformation that we all want to hope for. And it's not found simply in better science or greater efforts, but a reversal of the curse that leads to death and the start of something new. So I'd love you to chat again on your tables about what you think of these ideas. If there were no limits on your power and resources, what solution would you have to this crisis? Perhaps it'd be worth imagining the best possible outcome you could think of. And what do you make of the idea that we need spiritual and cultural transformation? I wonder, what would be your solution to the crisis if you had no end of resources? I wonder what kind of ideas you were imagining. For God, the solution was to enter into the world and start creating again, to bring light to the darkness. As we follow John's account, we come to meet Jesus, the creator of the universe coming as a human, the light of the world. In those early chapters of John, Jesus is seen going about from town to town performing miracles, healing the sick, teaching with authority, and claiming to be God. And many are left wondering who this man is. Who is this one who is lighting up the darkest parts of life? And Jesus tells them, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Does this sound familiar? As John began his biography, he kept drawing us to the light, opening our eyes to it, so that when it appeared, we'd be ready. John kept telling us one was coming who would bring light to everyone by his life. And here, Jesus claims to be that light. What sort of a picture is he painting as he calls himself the light of the world? John has already made a connection for us in that very first chapter. Light brings life. It brings physical light to the earth. It feeds the trees that feed us and keep the world moving. The earth needs light to live. If the sun never rose again, the world would die. We weren't made for darkness, but for light. And light brings life to our souls. Just like physical light is needed to grow life, so the light of truth and goodness is needed to guide our souls to life. We too are walking in darkness, slaves to our selfish desires that lead us to death. But Jesus enters and says, I am the one who can show you the way to the light. He tells the people that following him will lead them to life. Like walking down a dark path, if we continue in the shadows, we'll never find the way out. But if we follow in the footsteps of the light, the way forward will be made clear, and we'll see the way we need to go. As Jesus is born into his creation, he reminds us that our efforts were always going to fail because we weren't able to deal with the real issue. We can try to pick up the mess, sweeping parts of it under the rug and tidying up around the edges, but we can't fix the root problem of our hearts. But he can. He gives us hope that there can be a fix, both for this world and for the perpetrators of the problem. And for the true effect of this light to be seen, it had to be darkened. Just as the curse drew everything into the ground to die, Jesus had to go there too. He had to take on himself the curse that rightly fell on this world for its rebellion. And he paid the price for the mess and destruction we have caused. And rather than coming to his creation to point the finger of blame and demand more work, Jesus came to take the blame as if it was his. He put his perfectly spotless hands up in place of our dirty, greedy hands and said, "It was my fault," and paid for our mistakes. And as the hands that crafted the ground were nailed to a cross, the curse was ended. The full effect of the damage was poured out on Jesus. His body was broken, made barren and destroyed, so that the earth and all that inhabit it could know life again. The curse drew everything into the ground to die. Since the greed of man displayed at the beginning of creation, everything that has been born has gone back into the ground in decay. Crops fail, water is polluted, animals grow extinct, the ground itself cracks and breaks, causing disaster for all who live on it. People age, wither, and pass away. Everything has been on a trajectory to destruction and death, shackled and unable to escape its fate. But like a seed that looks like nothing, that looks dead and lifeless when it goes into the ground, and yet springs up to life, 3 days later, life sprung out of the grave as Jesus lived again. He reversed the curse and began the work of recreating, starting with his own resurrection and spreading out to every inch of this earth. And then the new creation that will come when Jesus returns, it won't simply be that ice caps will stop melting, but they'll be restored to all their beauty. It won't simply be that other animals won't go into extinction, but all of life will be restored. It won't just be the case that we'll slow down the climate change for the next generation, but the new planet will never decay again. The effects of Jesus' resurrection have a universal scope. The whole of life will be changed. That is a day we look forward to with great hope. But in today, because of the light of the world coming into our darkness, the crucial issue of our human rebellion and mess is dealt with. His willingness to take our guilt on himself sets us free from the consequences of it. Because Jesus, in all his perfection, went to the cross as a criminal, taking on our greed as if it was his own, we are not left hopeless and guilty for our part in the destruction of this world, but can come to the light, to have our hands washed clean and our desires and efforts renewed. Maybe the best we could hope for in ourselves might be slowing down the crisis. But Jesus offers a hope greater than that. Jesus being the light of the world means that one day this world will be filled with light as the waters cover the sea, and all darkness will be cast out. Darkness won't be seen anywhere, not even in the curling of a dying leaf or the failure of a seed to grow. Never again will floods wreck the earth or forest fires consume it. Never again will we be trapped and stuck in a cycle of decay, because everything will be alive and will keep on living forever. Jesus will fill the world and everything will be beautiful with his life-giving light. The climate crisis will not only end, but be reversed. The world will cease its groaning and come into its full beauty again. Like the snow melting at the end of a long, cold, life-sapping winter, the light will dawn over the earth and release it from its decay. That's some pretty big claims to make. I wonder what you think of those. These are our last 2 questions before we wrap up this evening. How would your desire to save our dying world be transformed by knowing this reality? If this was true, how would your efforts be renewed? And what is attractive to you about this hope for our planet and for you personally? And where do you still have questions? Let me just close our time together by drawing some of these thoughts to a close. Jesus is inviting us to follow him into the light, to let him reveal to us our darkness and come to be released from it. And if we choose to do that, he will be the light that truly shows us the wonder of this world. He will open our eyes to the wonder of the oceans. He will let us feel in fresh ways the sea breeze. He will help us gaze in awe at all the creatures his hand has formed. And he will renew our love for this world as we see it through its creator's eyes. So can I invite you to take the future of the universe as seriously as God does? To recognize your need for his light in your life? To embrace the commitment to care for his world, but in the knowledge that the future of this planet does not rest on my ability to make good choices about disposable plastics and second-hand clothes. To hope in something greater than simply slowing down the melting ice caps or reducing emissions, but in a complete restoration of the whole world. Our efforts aren't wasted in Jesus. One day it really will not just be that the world is preserved but renewed. So today we can live in the freedom of knowing that while we could never be the solution, we can know the one who is. We can put our hands to work to care for this planet as God intended us to. And we can do so with dignity, not despair, knowing our efforts are not small drops in an ocean, but meaningful work that will be revealed when the planet is renewed and we see it in all its beauty. That's what Jesus offers you. As we take up his invitation to follow him into the light, we can have a real, certain hope of the crisis of our world, better than anything we could imagine. That offer is yours to accept today.